In this week's Haftorah, we read about the good spies. Vayishlach Yoshua ben Nun min Hashitim Shnayim Anoshim Meraglim. Prior to the conquest of the land of Israel, the Torah tells us that Yoshua sent out two messengers to do a reconnaissance of the land of Israel. Cheresh, he sent them out, says the Targum, secretly. Rashi brings down that the word cheresh is meant to be read not just with a shin, cheresh, but with the dot on the right, cheres, suggesting the word pottery, telling us that the way that they were able to travel covertly was under the guise of cheres, pottery salesmen, peddlers of pottery. The Sfas Emes asks, why pottery? They could have sold anything. The cover story, the legend, was that they were peddlers. Why pottery? The second set of spies were acutely aware that 40 years earlier, the first set of spies sent by Moshe, although hand-picked for their spiritual greatness, came back with a terrible report, with tragic consequences for the entire nation. They allowed, according to the commentaries, they allowed personal considerations to skew their judgment, sensing that the change from the desert to the land of Israel would have negative consequences on their personal lives. They viewed the report, they viewed what they saw in a way to bring back a detrimental picture of the land of Israel. Therefore, the second set of spies chose to peddle pottery. Pottery is different from all other utensils. If an item is made with metal or wood or glass, it has two values. The material itself has worth, and then the item which has been fashioned into a utensil has value because of its ability to function as that utensil. Therefore, according to Jewish law, we are told that these items are metame. They are rendered spiritually impure by contact either to the inside of the object or even by mere contact with the outside of the vessel. Cheres, pottery, however, being made from earthenware, it has no intrinsic value. The only value it has is its ability to function as a working utensil. And therefore it only becomes contaminated, spiritually impure, by contact to the inside of that vessel. The second set of spies were acutely aware how 40 years earlier, the spies chosen by Moshe, handpicked for their spiritual greatness, came back with a terrible report with tragic consequences for the entire nation. What caused them to view the entry into the land of Israel in such a negative fashion? They saw negative impact for their own personal positions, for their own future, leaving the desert and entering the land of Israel. And these personal considerations, this sense of their own self-worth, true though it may have been, allowed them to skew their vision and come back with a disastrous report. Therefore, the second set of spies chose pottery to remind themselves of the need to focus only on the mission, to the negation of any personal considerations they would have on their own or about their own being. I think there's an important insight in this Sfas Emes, not just in terms telling us not just where to place our values, but how. After all, in life, we all want to do what's right. But ultimately, there's always one person that gets in our way. One person that stands between us and what we should be doing. And that is ourselves, our ego, our own sense of self, our fears, our desires, our wants. How do we transcend that? How do we get past all of our negios, our personal biases, to be able to journey through life the way we should? I think the answer to this critical question can be found as well in the words of the Sfas Emes here. But this idea came alive to me after reading an incredible story that I'd like to share with you. In the book, The Legacy, Teachings from the Life of the Great Lithuanian Rabbis, written by Rabbi Beryl Wine and Chief Rabbi Warren Goldstein, Rabbi Goldstein shares something that inspired me greatly. He writes about how in June of 1941, the Germans were approaching an invasion of Lithuania. The community of Telz, where the great yeshiva of Telz was located, sent two emissaries to America, Rav Elyameir Bloch and Rav Mordechai Katz, were sent to America to obtain visas to be able to rescue the Jews of Telz before the onslaught of the Nazi invasion. They were smuggled east, traveling through Siberia and Asia to reach the United States. They arrived after a long journey, only to find that on July 15th, 1941, not long after they had left, the Nazis invaded, and the entire town of Telz was wiped out. Rav Elyameir Bloch lost his wife and all his children except for one daughter. Rav Mordechai Katz learned about the murder of his wife and all 10 of his children. Their pain was excruciating, unbearable. There was no one to bring to America. The entire yeshiva was murdered. There were barely any Jews left in the entire town. And these two young rabbis found themselves in a strange country with a language they didn't speak, bereft and mourning the loss of everything that they had known. And yet, incredibly, then and there they decided that the yeshiva of Telz was to be recreated on American soil. And in 1942, while European Jewry was being annihilated, they already began the groundwork of reestablishing the Telz Yeshiva in Cleveland, Ohio. Where did they find the superhuman strength to build Torah at that time, in spite of and in the face of everything that they had just lost? Rabbi Mordechai Gifter, speaking years later, Rabbi Gifter, who had joined them in later years in running the Telz Yeshiva in Cleveland. Rav Gifter said the following words, and I want to read them. Rav Elia Meir Bloch was motivated by a deep sense of mission, sent to America by a message couched in the persecution and destruction of European Jewry. It was this sense of mission which brought forth all of his endless efforts in the building of Torah in this country. When one's life is permeated with this consciousness, then all is part of the plan of divine providence. All situations and conditions in life represent the various forms in which one must perform the mission for which he was sent into this world. Rav Gifter is explaining to us that the strength that these Torah giants found and the ability that they mustered to build and create anew came from an abiding sense of mission that a person has in life. To the extent that a person recognizes that we are here in this world with a purpose, and that purpose transcends anything and everything about us as individuals. The sense of mission gives a person the ability to overcome pain, the ability to go beyond the distractions that life throws our way in good times and in terrible times. We all share a common mission in life. There is a mission that we as Jews all undertake together, and each individual has a personal mission in life. And to the extent that we, as these two rabbis, are able to see our personal mission in life, it gives an incredible strength. It gives a clarity. It gives us an ability to rise above ourselves. Our personal mission does not need to be to change the world, but it does need to be to somehow, in some way, make the world a better place. And most importantly, it needs to come from an area that we see as something real to us, meaningful to us, personal to us. Something that speaks to my interests, my talents, my capabilities. When we throw ourselves into that kind of a mission, we are tapping an area, we are tapping an endeavor that has the capacity to allow us to go beyond all of our pettiness and all of our ego and all of the distractions of our personal life. Because we can create a stronger focus into this area that to us is so deeply personally meaningful in life. This, I think, is what the Sfas Emes is telling us the second spies did. They chose pottery not merely to remind themselves of their insignificance relative to the mission they were undertaking, but perhaps to remind themselves to focus on the mission and to use the focus on their mission to be able to transcend themselves. There's an inner good spy with each and every one of us. And it's never too late to identify an area in which we can make our mark in life, our mission and goal in life, and in so doing, tap this incredible power that the second spies used to be able to overcome the pitfalls of Moshe's spies. Shabbos.